The next thing that we're going to see that is going to be a challenge, or something that we're going to look out for, is a major increase in, basically, I would say, drug-based spirituality, and the use of mind-altering substances that are natural or synthetic to create spiritual experiences. And this will be done in large groups as ceremonies, large massive ceremony parties. This will be done in small group circles, and it will be very popular because so many people will just not know where to start with spirituality, and they'll know that something's out there. They'll know that they have to heal, but they feel so frozen inside. They feel so cut off from their spirit, and they don't know how to get that energy flowing. They don't know how to start sensing their spirit in them. And so one of the ways that people are going to come across this is through doing psychedelics. Again, natural psychedelics, but also synthetic psychedelics. And a lot of people are going to fall into this trap where they're going to start associating psychedelic experiences through hallucinogens with genuine spiritual development. Okay, so essentially, when you take a plant medicine or a synthetic, like LSD, or a synthesized hallucinogen, that is an external stimulation, okay? That's not an internal stimulation. And in order to spiritually evolve, you need to develop that internal stimulation. You need to develop that internal fire, or the inner light. Now, our ancestors all had different forms of plant medicine, and they would use it. Usually it was used for individuals who needed to sense something. But the most powerful shaman actually didn't really use substances anymore. All they needed to use was their breath or a drum, because they had developed that ability to create spiritual vision, spiritual power from the inside. And even if you take a hallucinogen, you can have an experience with a being, or you can go to the astral plane, but you're going in a way where it's not totally and completely you. So in other words, the kind of the DMT that comes out, or the chemicals that are created in your body, they're not really it's not the same experience that you would get if you were developing yourself without substances. So it's actually something completely different, but sort of similar. And so one of the risks with using substances is it's often way more of a opening than you would naturally create in your body. And this makes you very vulnerable to lower astral entities. It makes you very vulnerable to starting to create associations with different beings and the lower astral plane that you probably don't want to create. And you can become addicted to those, or you can start to think that the lower astral plane is the higher plane. There's many different risks with using plant medicines and hallucinogenics in a way where it just becomes your entire spiritual experience, because ultimately you're not learning to control your experience. The only way that you can really control your experience is if you are the creator of that experience within you. If you're taking substances, you're much less likely to be able to control yourself, your experiences, who comes around, things like that. And so this is going to become a very big problem in the future, because so many people are going to realize how unnatural our society has become. And people are going to want to go back to nature. They're going to want to go back to perhaps even their ancestral roots. They're going to want to do ceremonies. They're going to want to gather. They're going to want to connect with their spirits. They're going to want to, there's going to be urges to do all of this, but it's going to happen in a way that's not like any ancestral tradition. It's going to happen in a way that is a distortion of it. It's going to be a misuse of plant medicine. It's going to be a misuse of hallucinogenics in order to ultimately connect these groups of people to lower beings and to lower planes, and the use of these hallucinogenics, these stimulants, in order to connect people basically to the lower astral plane and the various beings on it. So it's a way to get people spiritually connected and bonded with lower beings, right? Because it's not going to be led by people who are genuinely capable of leading these things. So this is a very negative use of these things, all right? So these events and techniques will force people to open too far, and they will not be able to control it, but they will think they will be able to, and it will cause damage. All right, so this is what we're looking at. It's a really good way to brainwash people. Remember this as well coming into the next decade. Using hallucinogenics is what MKUltra did. They use, that was one of the main wings of their program, was how can we use hallucinogenics of all varieties, from the mushrooms, from various different types of synthesized LSD to everything. They did it all, and they figured out how to control people, how to do mind control with it. This is one of the most famous programs in MKUltra, is using hallucinogenics, natural and synthetic, in order to brainwash people. So, when your favorite podcasters, when your favorite celebrities start to talk about this really cool retreat that's really hip and really fun, and we're just going to, you know, do this shaman ceremony thing or like whatever, and we're just gonna do it, and it's just gonna connect with the aliens, and you're gonna connect with your spirit guide, and it's gonna be so amazing. When this starts to happen, or when the bro communities start to happen, and gotta do the DMT thing, the DMT parties, remember this. Remember MKUltra. And remember how the government and various dark forces in this world used plant medicines and LSD and hallucinogenics to brainwash people. Many times through making them think that they're having a spiritual experience, or directly causing a demonic possession. Please remember this. Okay, moving on. The next thing that we are going to see that's going to have an effect on our spirituality moving into the next 100 years is something that I speak on a lot: transhumanism. So certain people, again, sense this need for humanity to evolve, for a spiritual science to happen, but they misinterpret that idea. They misinterpret esoteric texts entirely. And they feel like humanity's next step is to merge with machines. They think that the singularity is technology. The singularity is really the Merkaba. The singularity is really your soul. The singularity is actually going inward into your being and becoming the alchemist, where you actually transmute your form out of the material plane. You don't bind yourself in it deeper by adding machine parts to yourself. That's not the singularity. The singularity is not AI. AI is a mockery and inversion of a real singularity that happens within us when we go inward and we realize that the cosmos and everything outside of us is inside. That is the singularity. The singularity is the heart. The singularity is the heart. The Merkaba, as I said in one of my videos, I can link it below, the Holy Human Form, I think it was that video, I talk about how the advanced interdimensional beings, or angels, they don't use technology. Like, they don't need it. They can do all of this stuff that people use technology for in the lower timeline through alchemizing their own energy. They can bilocate. They can read the Akashic records. They can appear in different places. They can use stargates. You know, they don't need technology. Is really something that came about in a very high form in Atlantis that we're still working with, really peaked in around 1920. And now we're supposed to actually reconnect with the earth. And we're supposed to understand how organic consciousness works, the interconnectivity of all things, of all beings. This is the direction that we are supposed to go if we want to evolve and keep our form and stay in the evolutionary wave. But there will be a negative evolutionary impulse that is obsessed with AI, that thinks AI is the way to go, and worships AI, that worships transhumanism, and that seeks to become a superhuman through transhumanism. They think that that is the superhuman. When ironically, again, the real superhuman needs no augmentation. The real superhuman needs no physical augmentation. There's nothing super about that. You're just adding things that are going to destroy you later on. Real masters, real highly advanced humans from higher spheres, they don't use technology. They don't need it. Technology started in Atlantis and in our society as a way for us to kind of evolve to a certain degree, but eventually it all goes inward. And we're able to do these incredible, incredible feats. We're able to communicate telepathically, bilocate, levitate. There's so many different cities that we can do, even ones that are not mentioned yet because they're associated with such high levels of human advancement. But that I assure you that human evolution has nothing to do with transhumanism. We don't need it. To use it is actually to make a mockery of the cities that we have, the spiritual abilities that we have, like putting a chip in your brain in order to tap into some collective consciousness. Okay, you can learn how to develop your claircognizance. You can spiritually develop to read the Akashic record, and guess what? That's better than any kind of transhumanism, because having a chip in your brain in order to access some kind of collective clairvoyance or something, that's a human creation. That's not created by God or an angel. That's created by that billionaire guy that was talking about dropping kids off at the pool. You know, this is not something that I'm personally interested in being a part of, you know, quite frankly. So we have to understand that, you know, spiritual evolution is organic, and that's going to be one of the biggest tests of our time. And we will also see not only that the spiritual community will begin to break off as well. Again, this is another way in which it will begin splitting, because it's going to become very, very trendy to have a very cold, calculated, almost like the universe is a computer, and a very inhuman universe where everything's sort of transactional and cold and inhuman. And we're going to see that. We're going to see spiritual teachers begin to talk about how AI is the way, promoting probably different types of interdimensionals that worship AI or that are controlled by AI. I'm going to be speaking about this more in the future as well. The AI, how lots of psychics are actually channeling an AI stream. It's not actually spiritual beings at all. It's literally an AI signal. So we're going to get into that a little bit later as well. But we're also going to see synthetic spirituality, which involves, like I said, drugs, the excessive use of drugs. It involves aliens as our creators, things like this, transhumanism, and kind of a cold and human spirituality that's very externalized, very, very externalized. Never tells you to really go inward unless it's just, you know, because they have to mention it. But everything that they actually teach and practice will be drawing people outward, outside of themselves. Okay? We can get more into this later. Let me know in the comment section what parts of this you want me to go deeper into. Okay, so the next and last prediction and challenge I see for us in the spiritual community is the attempt to introduce a new cosmically oriented religion. If you guys have watched my Mars Mysteries series, you will notice that I've been talking a lot about this alien creator God ideology, or this kind of cosmic religion that is going to be introduced, that was really sort of seems to come forward around World War II era with certain secret societies. And then this sort of hyper materialistic spirituality starts to emerge, where it's almost like a certain group's consciousness has degenerated to such an extreme degree that they can't read spiritual documents properly. They can't read sacred texts properly. They can't see history properly, especially that point in history where the density shifts, because they immediately conflate it. And they're conflating everything, and everything's reducing too fast because their mind actually isn't developed to a spiritual enough degree to actually read certain mystery texts and understand them. Because the whole thing about studying esoterica is that the mind and the student has to be prepared. And if certain people that are not ethical or they're not spiritually prepared get a hold of certain esoteric texts, certain esoteric ideologies, they won't understand it. And they'll take the most materialist, literal interpretation from it. Okay, and so this is what's been going on for actually thousands of years, is there's certain groups in the world that have completely misunderstood and inverted various different spiritual principles, histories, events, things like this. And they've created this whole divergent reality, and they're interacting with it as well. So they're creating it, and it's a whole stream, and they're also interacting with various different other beings that are in it, but in the lower astral plane. And this is the divergent timeline, which is an inversion of reality. And so this is the problem when you have a lot of intergenerational power and things like this, is you get people exposed to different spiritual texts, different secret societies, and maybe at one point 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago, this family or individual had the spiritual understanding to understand what these texts are. But then when you get like 7 generations later, the offspring is now looking at these things and they're in positions of power, and they literally don't have the consciousness to understand. And this is not a statement of arrogance from me. This is literally, genuinely, certain spiritual texts cannot be read or understood until the mind reaches a certain level of initiation. Until that point, it will interpret everything in a distorted way. This is why spiritual teachers will not share certain things until a certain time or until a student is ready. And this is also why through your own volition, through your own development, you can actually begin to develop yourself kind of fast by just upping your consciousness, by meditation, by different exercises. And then that's why you can just look at a symbol and start getting downloads. You can read something at the beginning of your journey, and then at the next part of your journey, you just totally get it. Or why you suddenly all of a sudden just get a teacher when you never got them before. So we have to understand that the mind is prepared for certain topics. And when the unprepared mind enters into certain discussions, certain ancient things about ancient history, it will distort them. And this is what has happened with a lot of people in power. And there's a lot of possession. They're possessed by dark entities, just quite frankly, just real. They are. There's a lot of people in power and on the planet that are suffering with possession. Okay? So anyway, back to my point, which is that we're also going to see in our lifetime, I believe in our lifetime, probably actually in the next couple of years, in the beginning, at least they're going to try, they're going to try to introduce a new cosmic religion. Now, as I started out this video, every epoch is different, every civilization is different, and there's people who are in positions of power, who are from families of power, who fancy themselves the rulers of the world. They're it. And part of when you think that you're the ruler of the world, even if you got it by hook or crook, part of that is your right, to usher in the new religion, because you're the rulers of the world, so you get to usher in the new spirituality of the Aquarian age. You get to do that because of your right as this important person, this important family, whatever in the world. And so there are groups in the world that are going to try to introduce the religion of the coming age, which is the age of Aquarius for us, but they know that we're transitioning and they know that there's going to be a new ideology that's needed. We can't keep using and interacting with the spiritual world in the same way we did. And so they know that there has to be a new system. People get restless even, and old systems die. They stop making sense anymore as people evolve. And so there's individuals that get together and try to control the world. I'm not going to dance around that anymore. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that they want to introduce a religion. And this kind of gives a certain global group ultimate control. If they can introduce a religion, they've got your soul. They can control how you interact with spirit and what you think of it. That is the last nail in the coffin in a control sense. And so what the whole step that humanity is in is cosmic spirituality. Where we are going is we're going to start to, and this is the natural evolution I'm talking about. This is the natural progression of consciousness that certain darker groups are gonna wanna like latch onto and try to create a system that uses these ideas, but that is unholy. Okay, it's wrong. It's based in control. It's based in power, right? So they're trying to use these, what the age of Aquarius is and where humanity is going, and kind of latch onto that and piggyback onto that to maintain control of society. And where humanity is going is into cosmic spirituality. And this is actually part of spiritual science. So the cosmos is actually the most succinct history book. Not because of various different cosmic soap operas or galactic wars or alien interactions. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the reality that every planet contains information that your soul has deposited there, and every star contains information, pure information. Now, it's still human, right? But it is pure information. And so as we move forward in our spirituality, we begin to be able to kind of work with cosmic energies more directly. That's part of it. And we begin to think cosmically. and we begin to remember our lives on different planetary spheres. We begin to remember different kind of beings that don't look like us, or superhuman beings, or kind of degraded human. We begin to, the best way that I could describe it is the earth begins to thaw it's almost like the earth was in a locked position for a long time, but it's actually going to begin to thaw, and other worlds are going to become more obvious. And the only way we can understand interdimensional beings or aliens and other worlds is by understanding the cosmic science, specifically the cosmogony of how the earth was created in the 7 stages. I will link that lecture below. But there's so many different things that we have to get before we can really get this whole cosmic spirituality thing. So this group, and they've been putting kind of trial balloons out. They've been putting feelers out for a while, and nothing's really worked. Usually this is called disclosure as well. But disclosure, we have to understand that, like, disclosure is not the government coming out and saying, oh yeah, in Hangar 43, we've got some reverse engineered crafts. Yeah. That's not disclosure. Disclosure is not, oh yeah, Roswell, that was or wasn't an alien. Oh yeah, that contact, we had that contact, we're in contact with these kinds of beings. That actually is not disclosure. Real disclosure is human beings actually reconnecting with their cosmic memory. Their memories of Atlantis, their memories of Mu, and their spiritual power. Because the moment that we begin to see even a craft that behaves in a way that is different than what we're used to, that starts to bring up so many different questions. The moment that we see an alien, eventually we're going to have some very important questions about the nature of our reality, like time and like space. And so there is no disclosure without it turning into some kind of spiritual impulse or potential religion. Disclosure is a new religion. It leads to a new religion, right? And so there will be a point where the government, which is based more on the military, a lot of the times when you see the disclosure movement, they often, it's really a strange decision, but they'll often use like ex-FBI agents or like ex-CIA agents. And they're like, yes, the people will think that these people are honorable. And it's like a formula. It's like, oh yes, there's a CIA guy. Here's a bunch of people from the CIA. Here's a bunch of people from the FBI. And they're going to tell you now about the aliens, about interdimensionals, about the cosmos. After it literally being their job to keep it a secret, suddenly they've turned and are now going to reveal it all. But who says we need a military person at all to be that voice? The argument is that it should actually be a spiritual voice. It should actually be somebody who can talk fluently and knowledgeably about interdimensionality, about higher worlds, about planetary spheres. That is disclosure. The militaristic, hyper-masculine, disclosure that's mainly about crafts is bizarre. Because that will happen for a very short phase where people will be interested in the technology, and then it's going to go into a spiritual level. And that is where the danger is. And so we will see disclosure attempts, and with this we will see various different secretive groups in society that are behind government and all of that stuff try to introduce a new cosmic spirituality. Part of this will be the worship of AI. Now, what Avi Loeb is doing where he's like, listening for this, he's listening for the signals. And I think Dark Journalist covers this very well, where he says, you know, just waiting for the moment for Avi Loeb to get that alien signal and then tell humanity that we have to get our AI up to snuff so that we can communicate with this alien satellite or this alien being or this alien thing that's communicating with us, you know. And then suddenly there's these advanced aliens that, you know, maybe the alien god creator myth will come in and they'll say that there are creators. Maybe they'll tell us that global warming is a bad thing. Maybe they'll, who knows? Who knows? But you can be sure that it's crap. You can be sure that that is an AI, transhumanist religion that was planned for a very long time to introduce a new space alien cosmic religion. And I will not parse words around this. I don't think we have time in our society today to walk delicately around this topic or worry about if this is offensive, okay? We need to understand that there is a group on this planet that is communicating with various dark interdimensional beings. A lot of people would call them demons or just dark interdimensionals or aliens or whatever language you want to use. They are in contact with them. And a huge part of the lower astral plane and the demonic planes thing for us in this time is AI, is an AI god. And that their consciousness basically devolves to such a degree in the future that it has to be AI. That's the only part of them that really kind of survives. We can go into this later if you want me to, just go real into that. We can definitely do that. I think it'd be good. But, you know, I think that there's an incredible desire to pick up some kind of radio signal and say, ooh, you know, ooh, what's the code? You know, these are the aliens, or these are the alien gods, or this is the AI signal. And then sort of creating a bizarre, cold, I think it's going to feel very militaristic as well, like very technologically based. There's not going to be a lot of feminine energy in it. It's not going to be satisfying to a lot of people, actually. But it will rise and it'll become popular for a certain period of time. And some people will really, really get into it. But it will be a false religion. It'll be an attempt at a false religion that includes aliens and AI and technologies and probably transhumanism and you know, aliens as creators, maybe hybridization programs and genetic modification, probably drug-based spirituality. It's going to be a whole thing that's going to happen, and they're going to try to pitch that as the spirituality of the new age, right? In reality, you know, spiritual science and the mystery science has nothing to do with those things. These are the fruits and obsessions of the lower timeline of humanity, of the fallen timeline of humanity. This is their thing. This is their circus that they want everybody indoctrinated into and taking part of. This is their thing. And we will have to go through a period of false religion, of false disclosure. This group that is in power, they have amassed so much wealth and control. It's going to take a little bit of time before we can see that go through attrition. You know, it's going to take a little bit of time. So we are going to see some really weird, bizarre things. And one of the things is going to be this weird disclosure thing that's going to happen. And the weird spiritual ideas that are going to come across that are based in total materialist ideas. And in one way, it may actually kind of serve us by being a complete example of what is unnatural and what is bad, what is shallow, and what is based in control rather than freedom. Things like med beds, things like various different healing technologies, spiritual technologies, maybe even eventually down the line, aliens or interdimensionals being introduced as creators, things like this. This is all planned, and I think that people are just sort of tracking all of the algorithms on social media to see how people relate, to see how people respond. But it's gonna get to a point where they have to do that operation. You can't sit on your hands all day. They have to move forward. They're gonna have to move forward with it. So when they do, let's be ready and let's understand where we are genuinely going in spirituality. And let's continue to discuss these things. Let's continue to speak them in the ether. Share them with your friends, share them with your family, share this video. You know, have the tough conversations. Go there. Look into the future and see what is coming that is good, what is growing. But then also, what do we have to be careful about? We are coming into an absolutely beautiful time. And spiritual sovereignty and the ability to work upon yourself, the ability to not have to depend on a teacher. This is, it's just complete freedom of yourself, total. It brings a level of joy and power to you that really has not been available to us as human beings until this moment. And so even though we are facing such challenges like there's going to be some splitting in the spiritual community in the next decade, and starting quite a bit sooner, between kind of shallow spirituality or grifters or cheap spirituality and a real spiritual impulse that's going to evolve. This is a good thing. It's good. It's part of nature for things to fission and break apart eventually when they build up to a certain point. It's okay if people go through a period of rejecting certain aspects of spirituality too. That's okay as well, because through all of this, we will be coming back to that common thread of true spiritual science, the truth behind every single religion, the truth behind every single ritual. What is the truth? We will come to this through going through all these challenges, we will come to know that it's really about the inner process and our inner world through various people going through drug-based spirituality, thinking that hallucinogenics is the same thing as spiritual experience. Okay? We're going to go through transhumanism in our lifetime as well. But in a way, all of these things are like what is leaving us, if you will. So thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for listening. If you have liked this session that we've had today, please don't hesitate to join my website. I do basically this every 2 weeks, and I take your questions as well. There's an amazing community of mystics where you can continue to talk about these topics and have a community that is like-minded. So I'll link that below by making a donation or becoming a premium member. That allows me to continue to make these videos, to keep them free and available for everyone. So as always, I know we've had some tough conversations today. Thank you for joining me. All my love your way, and I will see you in my next video.